The moment that destroyed my life started with a coffee stain. I was standing in my kitchen on a Tuesday morning, watching the dark liquid spread across Brandon's laptop keyboard while he shouted from the shower upstairs. My hand had slipped. Just a simple accident. I grabbed paper towels, dabbing frantically at the expensive machine when the screen lit up. That's when I saw her name, Veronica Hayes. And below it, a message that made my blood turn cold. Baby, the transfer went through. Another $50,000. She has no idea. Love you. My legs stopped working. I sank into the kitchen chair, still holding the coffee-soaked towels, staring at that message like it was written in a foreign language my brain refused to translate. The water was still running upstairs. Brandon was humming something. Happy. Content. I scrolled up with shaking fingers and the entire conversation loaded. Months of messages. Years maybe. When are you leaving her? After we secure the rest of the money. Did you forge her signature on the investment documents? Veronica handled it perfectly. That's why I love having a lawyer girlfriend. Investment documents. My money. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from screaming. The inheritance from my parents' $5.7 million they'd left me after the car accident 3 years ago was supposed to be safe. Brandon had convinced me to let him manage it. I'm your husband, he'd said, holding my hand during the funeral reception. Let me take care of this for you. You're grieving. You shouldn't have to worry about money right now. I trusted him. I'd signed papers he brought home, barely reading them because my eyes were too swollen from crying about my parents. He kissed my forehead and promised everything would be fine. The water stopped running upstairs. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my phone and took pictures of everything on the screen. Message after message. I scrolled faster, screaming silently in my head. There were attachments. Bank statements. Transfer records. Company names I didn't recognize: Brandwell Investments LLC, Clearwater Holdings Incorporated. My name was on the documents, but I'd never heard of these companies. The signatures looked like mine, but I didn't remember signing anything with these names. Naomi? Did you make coffee? Brandon's voice came from the top of the stairs. I slammed the laptop shut and stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Yeah, just spilled some. I'm cleaning it up. His footsteps moved toward the bedroom. I had maybe 2 minutes. My fingers flew across my phone, photographing every document I could pull up in his email. There were spreadsheets, projections, an email from Veronica with the subject line, "Final Phase." I opened it. My vision blurred as I read, "Once we drain the last account, we can file for divorce. I've already drafted the papers to make it look like marital asset division. She'll get maybe $200,000 if she's lucky. We'll have the rest $5.5 million to start our new life. The Cayman account is ready." The Cayman account. They'd moved my parents' money my father had spent 40 years building, money my mother had saved from her teaching salary, money they died protecting on their way home from the bank to the Cayman Islands. Naomi? Brandon appeared in the doorway, hair wet, smile easy. The same smile I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. The same smile I'd kissed on our wedding day. The same smile that had comforted me when they lowered my parents into the ground. It was all fake. You okay? You look pale. He walked over, reaching for my shoulder. I jerked away. I'm fine. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. His eyes narrowed slightly, then he glanced at his laptop. Did something happen to my computer? I spilled coffee on the keyboard. Sorry. I wiped it down. My voice sounded strange. High-pitched. Not like me. He opened the laptop, checking it. For a second I thought he saw something. His jaw tensed. But then he closed it again and shrugged. It's fine. I have a meeting at 9 anyway. Veronica and I are presenting the Henderson case to the partners. Veronica. He said her name like it meant nothing. Like she was just a colleague. Like she wasn't the woman planning to steal my entire life. How is Veronica? I asked, testing him. Fine. Same as always. Brilliant attorney. Real shark in the courtroom. He grabbed his briefcase, kissing my cheek. His lips felt like ice against my skin. I'll be home late tonight. Big celebration if we land this client. Don't wait up. Celebration. With her. Using my money. Sure, I whispered. He left. The door clicked shut. The sound of his car starting in the driveway. The engine fading down the street. I stood in my kitchen, the kitchen I'd renovated with my parents' money, in the house I'd bought with my parents' money, surrounded by the life I'd built with my parents' memory, and felt something crack inside my chest. Then I opened my phone and looked at the pictures I'd taken. Every message. Every document. Every piece of evidence of their betrayal. Brandon thought I was broken. Weak. Easy to manipulate. He had no idea who he was dealing with. My father used to tell me a story about his own father, my grandfather Thomas. He'd survived things Brandon couldn't imagine. Built things from nothing. My father always said, "You've got his blood, Naomi. That Barrett strength. If you ever need it, it'll be there." I needed it now. I sat down at the kitchen table and started making a list. Every account I knew about. Every document I'd ever signed. Every conversation I could remember about money. I wrote until my hand cramped, filling page after page with dates, amounts, names. Then I called my bank. "First National, how can I help you? I need to speak to someone about my accounts. All of them. I think there's been fraud." The woman's voice shifted from bored to alert. "Ma'am, I'm transferring you to our fraud department immediately." While I waited on hold, I stared at the picture on the mantel. My parents on their 30th anniversary, arms around each other, laughing. My mother's eyes crinkled at the corners. My father's hand protective on her waist. They'd worked so hard to give me security, safety, a future. And Brandon had stolen it all. "Fraud department, this is Rita speaking." I took a breath. "My name is Naomi Barrett. I need to report theft. $5.7 million. My husband and his girlfriend took everything." Rita from the fraud department put me on hold 3 times during that first call. Each time, the elevator music made me want to throw my phone across the room. When she finally came back on the line, her voice had changed from concerned to careful. "Mrs. Barrett, I'm looking at your accounts right now. I need to be honest with you. According to our records, all transfers were authorized with your signature and password verification." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I never authorized any transfers to companies I don't know. I have copies of the authorization forms here. Your signature is on every single one. And the transfers were made using your personal login credentials." Brandon. He'd watched me type my passwords 1,000 times. We'd shared everything. Or I thought we had. "Can you tell me when these transfers started?" I asked. Papers rustled on her end. "The first one was 26 months ago. January 15th. $100,000 to Brandwell Investments LLC. 2 years. They've been doing this for 2 years. Right after I'd told Brandon I wanted to start my own event planning business and would need to access some of the inheritance for startup costs. He talked me out of it. "Why risk your parents' money on a business that might fail?" he'd said. "Let me invest it properly. We'll grow it and then you can start your business with the profits." I believed him. "Rita, those signatures are forged. And someone stole my login information." "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but the bank requires proof of fraud. We'll need you to file a police report and provide evidence that you didn't authorize these transactions. Do you have any documentation showing coercion or identity theft?" "I have text messages between my husband and the woman he's having an affair with. They admit to forging my signature and stealing my money." Silence. "Then, I think you need to speak with our legal department. And possibly the police. This is beyond standard fraud." She transferred me again. I spent the next 4 hours on the phone with different people, bank lawyers, supervisors, the police non-emergency line. Everyone wanted proof. Evidence. Documentation. They all asked the same question. "Did you give your husband access to your accounts?" "Yes. Because he was my husband. Because I loved him. Because he'd held me while I cried and promised to take care of everything." By the time I hung up, the sun was setting. My throat hurt from talking. My eyes burned from staring at my phone screen. And I had nothing. No frozen accounts. No immediate investigation. Just a case number and advice to consult with an attorney. I went upstairs to Brandon's office. He'd converted the spare bedroom into his workspace 2 years ago, right around the time the first transfer happened. Coincidence? I didn't believe in those anymore. The door was locked. Brandon had never locked this door before. I rattled the handle, then remembered the small key we kept in the hallway closet for all the interior doors. My hands shook as I unlocked it. His office was pristine. Organized. Everything labeled and filed. Brandon was always neat, but this felt different. Deliberate. Like he was hiding something in plain sight by making everything look innocent. I started with his filing cabinet. Tax returns. Insurance policies. Mortgage documents. Everything looked normal until I found a folder labeled Investment Portfolio N. Barrett. My portfolio. Inside were statements from accounts I'd never seen before. Brandwell Investments. Clearwater Holdings. Summit Capital Group. Each one showed my name, my social security number, my signature. The initial deposits matched withdrawals from my inheritance accounts. Then the money moved again, transferred to other accounts, then overseas. He created a paper trail that made everything look legal. I photographed every page, my anger growing hotter with each click. There were emails printed out too. Correspondence between Brandon and Veronica planning everything. One email made me stop breathing. She's so trusting it's almost sad. I showed her the Henderson portfolio last night as an example of our investments, and she didn't even question that Henderson is my mother's maiden name. By the time she figures it out, we'll be gone. Henderson. The case he was presenting today with Veronica. There was no client. It was all code. All lies. I kept searching. In the bottom drawer, hidden under a stack of old magazines, I found a burner phone. My heart raced as I powered it on. It wasn't password protected, Brandon's arrogance showing. The text history made me physically sick. Brandon to Veronica. She's emotional tonight. Crying about her parents again. Perfect timing to get her to sign the Clearwater documents. Veronica to Brandon. You're so good at this. She has no idea she just signed away another $1 million. Brandon to Veronica. Sometimes I almost feel bad. Then I remember she'd never have this money if her parents hadn't died. We're just redistributing it to people who'll actually use it right. I read that message 3 times. He thought he deserved my parents' money more than I did. He thought their death was just an opportunity. An inconvenience that led to a windfall. My father had died instantly in the crash. My mother lived for 2 hours, long enough to tell the paramedics to tell me she loved me. And Brandon thought that was lucky for him. I threw the phone against the wall. It cracked but kept working, buzzing with a new message. I picked it up. Veronica, baby, where are you? Partners meeting starts in 5 minutes. Brandon, stuck in traffic. Start without me. Love you. Veronica, love you too. Can't wait to celebrate tonight. Our future is so close. Brandon, 1 more month and we're free. Divorce papers are ready to file. 1 month. I looked at the calendar on his desk. He'd marked a date 4 weeks away with a small red X. That's when he planned to destroy me. But he'd made a mistake. He'd underestimated me. And he'd left all this evidence where I could find it. I spent the rest of the evening photographing everything, uploading it to a secure cloud account Brandon didn't know about, and making copies. By the time I heard his car in the driveway at 11, I documented every shred of evidence in his office and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I was in bed pretending to sleep when he came in, smelling like expensive wine and Veronica's perfume. Naomi, he whispered. I didn't answer. He kissed my forehead, the same forehead he'd kissed the night before my parents' funeral, promising to love me forever, and went to shower. I lay in the dark, listening to the water run, feeling nothing but cold determination. Brandon thought he'd won. Veronica thought she was clever. They had no idea the war had just begun. I waited 3 days to confront Brandon. 3 days of pretending everything was normal while I made copies of copies, sent evidence to 3 separate email accounts, and consulted with every attorney I could find who specialized in financial fraud. Most of them told me the same thing. This is complicated. Your husband covered his tracks well. It could take years to sort out. Years I didn't have. The divorce papers were coming in less than a month. On Friday evening, I cooked Brandon's favorite meal. Steak, roasted potatoes, the expensive wine he liked. He came home confused but pleased. What's the occasion? He asked, loosening his tie. No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice. I smiled. It felt like my face would crack. We ate. He talked about work, casually mentioning Veronica twice like her name didn't make me want to flip the table. I nodded, asked questions, played the devoted wife. After dinner, I poured him another glass of wine and sat across from him at the table. Brandon, I need to talk to you about our finances. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. What about them? I want to access some of my inheritance. For that business I mentioned a couple years ago. I think I'm ready now. He set down his wine glass carefully. Naomi, we talked about this. The money is invested. You can't just pull it out without penalties. I don't mind paying penalties. It's my money. It's our money. We're married. The inheritance was left to me. In my name. His jaw tightened. Are you questioning how I've managed things? I've grown your portfolio significantly. Have you? I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken from his office. Because these statements show the money moving to companies I've never heard of. Branwell Investments. Clearwater Holdings. Henderson Capital. The color drained from his face. Then red flooded back in. Were you going through my office? Were you stealing from me? He stood up fast enough to knock his chair backward. Stealing? I'm your husband. I've been managing your money, investing it properly. Those are legitimate investment vehicles. Really? Because I called Branwell Investments. The registered agent is Veronica Hayes. Your girlfriend. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Brandon stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything. I stood up too, pulling out printed copies of the text messages. I threw them on the table. I know you've been having an affair with Veronica for 2 years. I know you've stolen $5.7 million from my inheritance. I know you forged my signatures. I know you're planning to file for divorce in 3 weeks and leave me with nothing. Brandon looked at the papers, then back at me. Something changed in his face. The mask fell away. The loving husband disappeared. What remained was cold and calculating. So you know. He shrugged. Fine. Yes. Veronica and I are together. Yes, we moved your money. And yes, I'm filing for divorce. The casual admission hit harder than I expected. Part of me had hoped he'd deny it. Apologize. Break down and beg for forgiveness. How could you? My voice broke despite my determination to stay strong. I loved you. I trusted you. After my parents died, you were all I had. That's exactly why it was so easy. He poured himself more wine, perfectly calm now. You were vulnerable. Grieving. You would have signed anything I put in front of you. And you did. You used my pain against me. I used an opportunity. There's a difference. He drank, watching me over the rim of his glass. Your parents were nice people, Naomi, but they were boring. Middle-class boring. That money was wasted on them, and it would have been wasted on you. Wasted on me? It was mine. And now it's mine. Ours. Veronica's and mine. He smiled. She's brilliant, you know. She structured everything perfectly. Every transfer is technically legal. You signed the documents. You authorized the accounts. The passwords were yours. In court, it'll look like you were fully involved in all investment decisions. I'll tell them you forged my signature. You'll have to prove it. Handwriting analysis will show the signatures are yours because I had you sign blank documents mixed in with other paperwork. I'd hand you 10 pages and you'd sign wherever I pointed. Remember all those nights I brought work home? You were so helpful. My legs felt weak. I sat back down. This was planned from the beginning? Not the beginning. I really did love you once, I think. But then your parents died and suddenly you were worth $5.7 million. That changes things. Veronica helped me see the bigger picture. Veronica. She's everything you're not, Naomi. Ambitious. Smart. Beautiful in a way that doesn't need effort. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. We're good together. We want the same things. You just wanted to plan parties and talk about your feelings. Each word was a knife. But I kept my face blank, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. The divorce papers are already drawn up, he continued. You'll get the house and maybe $200,000 after legal fees. Be grateful for that. Most women in your position would get nothing. You're stealing millions and acting like I should thank you for leaving me homeless. The house is worth something. Sell it. He checked his watch. I'm actually meeting Veronica in an hour. We're celebrating the Henderson closing. Or what you thought was the Henderson closing. He laughed. There never was a Henderson case. That was just code for the final transfer. As of yesterday, the last of your inheritance is safely in the Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands. Unreachable. Protected. Brandon walked to the door, grabbing his jacket. You should probably get a lawyer, Naomi. Though I doubt you can afford a good one now. Most of your credit cards are maxed out. You maxed out my credit cards too? Needed to cover some expenses while the transfer's processed. Don't worry, in the divorce settlement you'll be responsible for half of all marital debt. He opened the door. I'll be staying at Veronica's from now on. Pack up my things if you want or don't. I don't care either way. Brandon. My voice stopped him. You're going to regret this. He turned and his smile was pitying. No, Naomi. You're going to regret not being someone worth keeping. Then he left. I sat at the table surrounded by the expensive meal I'd cooked, the wine glasses, the evidence of his betrayal printed out in black and white, and I felt something shift inside me. I'd come into this confrontation hoping for remorse. Some part of me still believed in the man I'd married. That man was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. What remained was a thief, a liar, and a man who'd used my grief as a weapon against me. He thought he'd won. He thought I was broken. He was wrong. I pulled out my phone and dialed the first number on my list. A forensic accountant named Robert Chin who'd been recommended by one of the attorneys I'd consulted. Mr. Chin? This is Naomi Barrett. We spoke earlier this week about my husband's fraud case. I'm ready to move forward. I want to hire you. Mrs. Barrett. Have you spoken with your husband yet? Yes. He admitted everything. And I recorded the entire conversation. I had. My phone had been recording audio in my pocket the whole time. Every word. Every admission. Every cruel revelation. Then we have work to do, Robert said. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have. We're going to get your money back. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. My kitchen. In my house. Built with my parents' money. Filled with the life I'd created while Brandon systematically destroyed everything. Not anymore. The war had begun. And I was done playing defense. The house felt different after Brandon left. Bigger. Emptier. Every room echoed with memories I couldn't trust anymore. Had he ever loved me, or was every kiss a calculation? Every "I love you" a step in his plan? I couldn't stay there. Not that night. I drove across town to my grandmother's house. The one she'd left me when she died 5 years ago. I kept meaning to sell it, but something always stopped me. Brandon had pushed me to list it. Why are you holding on to that old place? It's just sitting there costing us money in taxes and maintenance. Now I understood why he'd wanted it gone. It was mine alone. Inherited before we married. He couldn't touch it. The house sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees. Small brick with a front porch that still had my grandmother's rocking chair. I hadn't been here in almost a year. The power was still on. I'd kept up the utilities thinking I'd eventually renovate and rent it, but everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. I walked through rooms full of furniture draped in white sheets, past the kitchen where my grandmother had taught me to make cornbread, and up the narrow stairs to the second floor. 3 small bedrooms and a bathroom. The last bedroom had a ceiling hatch that led to the attic. I'd never been up there. My grandmother had said it was just old junk and holiday decorations. Not worth the trouble. But that night, standing in the dark house with nowhere else to go, I pulled down the attic ladder and climbed up. The space was cramped and hot despite the cool October air outside. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled in my grandmother's careful handwriting. Christmas, Easter, Thomas's things. Thomas, my grandfather. He died before I was born. My father had always spoken about him with a mixture of pride and sadness. He was a strong man. Came up from nothing. Built everything our family has. I opened the box labeled Thomas's things. Inside were papers. So many papers. Deeds to properties I didn't know about. Stock certificates from companies that probably didn't exist anymore. Letters. Photographs of a tall, serious-looking man standing in front of various buildings. My grandfather. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in cloth, was a small metal lockbox. It was locked, but the key was taped to the underside with yellowed tape. My grandmother's handwriting on a note said, "For Naomi. When she needs it. When she needs it." My hands shook as I unlocked the box. Inside was a letter, a small key, and a savings account book from First Union Bank, dated 1950. I unfolded the letter carefully. The paper was brittle with age. To whoever opens this. My name is Thomas Barrett. If you're reading this, I'm long gone, but the work I did should still be here. I opened a savings account in 1950 with $500 I saved from working the mills. I added to it when I could. Not much. Maybe $50 here, $100 there. But I never touched the principal. I wanted it to grow for my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. People who'd need it someday. I also bought stock in a few companies I believed in. Good companies building America. I put those certificates in a safety deposit box at the bank. Box number 447. This key will open it. Tell your daddy I tried my best. Tell him I loved him. Tell him the Barrett family is built on hard work and faith, and this money represents both. Use it wisely. Use it well. Thomas Barrett, December 1950 inch. I read the letter 3 times. My grandfather had opened an account 75 years ago. He bought stocks. He put everything in a safety deposit box. Did it still exist? I looked at the savings account book. The last entry was from 1968, showing a balance of $3,200. Then nothing. Had someone closed it? Withdrawn it? But the key. The safety deposit box key. That was tangible. I clutched the letter to my chest and cried. Not sad tears. Something else. Hope maybe. Or fury. Or determination. My grandfather had built something for me. While Brandon was stealing what my parents left, my grandfather's gift had been waiting all along. I spent the rest of the night going through every box in that attic. I found more letters, photographs, documents showing properties my grandfather had bought and sold. He'd been a businessman in his own way, quiet, careful, building security for people he'd never meet. By sunrise, I had a pile of documents and the small key, and I knew what I had to do. First Union Bank didn't exist anymore. It had been bought by Second National, which merged with Regional Trust, which was eventually absorbed by American Federal Bank. I knew this because I'd worked as a teller at American Federal during college. Before I met Brandon. Before everything. I called the bank's main number as soon as they opened. American Federal, how may I help you? I need information about a very old account. From 1950. And a safety deposit box. The woman on the phone sounded skeptical. Ma'am, our records only go back to 1985 when Regional Trust merged with. I understand. But this account predates all the mergers. It was originally opened at First Union Bank. I have the original account book and a safety deposit box key. Silence. Then, please hold. I held for 15 minutes, listening to instrumental music, wondering if this was crazy. 75 years was a long time. The account was probably closed. The safety deposit box was probably drilled and emptied decades ago. Ma'am? This is Harold Jennings. I'm the senior branch manager. I understand you have a First Union account book from 1950? Yes. And a safety deposit box key. My grandfather opened them. What's the account number? I read it off the faded page. More silence. Keyboard clicking. Then Harold's voice changed, becoming very careful. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come into the branch. Today if possible. And bring identification, the account book, the letter you mentioned, and the key. Is the account still active? I can't discuss details over the phone. But yes, we have a record of this account. And the safety deposit box. He paused. Mrs. Barrett, when was the last time anyone accessed either of these? Never. Not since 1968, according to the book. Then you need to come in immediately. This is highly unusual. We're at the Maple Street location. Ask for me specifically. I drove there in a daze, the documents from the attic on my passenger seat. The bank was busy with the morning rush, but Harold met me at the door. He was an older black man with gray hair and kind eyes, and he led me to a private office in the back. Mrs. Barrett, I've been with this bank for 32 years. I've seen 3 mergers and thousands of accounts. But I've never seen anything like this. He opened his computer screen. Your grandfather's savings account has been accruing interest for 75 years. Compound interest. At rates that were much higher in the past than they are now. How much is in it? Harold turned the screen toward me. I looked at the number and couldn't breathe. $743,821.17. $3,000 had grown to over $750,000. But that's not all, Harold continued. The safety deposit box hasn't been opened since 1968. According to our records, it contains stock certificates. We can't know their current value without seeing them, but if your grandfather invested in stable companies. He trailed off. We went to the vault. Harold unlocked the safety deposit box with my key and his master key. Inside was a large metal box. He pulled it out and set it on the table in the private viewing room. I opened it. Inside were stock certificates. Hundreds of them. IBM, Coca-Cola, General Electric, Johnson & Johnson. Companies my grandfather had believed in. We'll need to have these valued, Harold said quietly. But Mrs. Barrett, some of these companies have split multiple times. This Coca-Cola certificate for 100 shares could be worth, well, significantly more now. I did quick math in my head. Coca-Cola had split 11 times since 1950. That 100 shares could be over 100,000 shares now. I need an exact evaluation, I said. As soon as possible. I'll call our investment department immediately. Harold left me alone in the room with my grandfather's legacy. I touched the certificates carefully, reading his name on each one. Thomas Barrett. A mill worker who'd saved every penny he could and invested in America's future. He'd given me a weapon. While Brandon thought he'd destroyed me, my grandfather had provided the ammunition I needed to fight back. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. And now I had the resources to win. The investment specialist arrived within an hour. Her name was Monica Patterson, and she handled the stock certificates like they were made of glass. These need to be authenticated first, she said, examining each one under a special light. But assuming they're legitimate, and they certainly look at you're holding a significant portfolio. How significant? Monica made notes on her tablet, calculating quietly. The IBM shares alone, accounting for splits and current market value, are worth approximately $2.3 million. The Coca-Cola shares another $1.8 million. General Electric, Johnson & Johnson, AT&T. She looked up at me. Mrs. Barrett, this box contains roughly $8.3 million in stock. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. $8 million. My grandfather's $500 investment in 1950 had grown to $8 million. Combined with the savings account, I had access to over $9 million that Brandon knew nothing about. I need these liquidated, I said. All of them. Monica's eyebrows raised. That's going to take some time. We need to authenticate, transfer to your name, and then. How long? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe 3. 3 weeks. Brandon planned to file divorce papers in 3 weeks. Make it 2 weeks. Whatever you need to do. Rush everything. I pulled out the letter from my grandfather. This letter establishes inheritance. I have his death certificate at home, my grandmother's death certificate, and documents proving I'm his granddaughter. What else do you need? Harold and Monica exchanged glances. Monica nodded. That should be sufficient. Mr. Jennings, can we expedite authentication? For this? Absolutely. Harold turned to me. Mrs. Barrett, I need to ask. Is everything all right? You seem urgent. I could have lied. But something about Harold's kind eyes made me tell the truth. My husband stole my inheritance. $5.7 million. He and his girlfriend, who's an attorney, have been systematically draining my accounts for 2 years. They think I'm broke. They think I'm helpless. They don't know about this. I gestured to the certificates. And I want to keep it that way until I can fight back properly. Harold's expression hardened. Your husband is an attorney? No. He works for a law firm. Corporate finance. His girlfriend is the attorney. She helped him make everything look legal. We need to protect these assets immediately, Harold said. Monica, set up new accounts in Mrs. Barrett's name only. No spousal access. High security passwords. Everything. Already on it. We spent the next 3 hours filling out paperwork. New accounts. New passwords. Security questions only I would know. Everything isolated from Brandon and any potential claim he could make. By the time I left the bank, it was after 2 in the afternoon. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called the forensic accountant, Robert Chin. Mr. Chin, it's Naomi Barrett. I have an update. Good timing. I've been analyzing the documents you sent. Mrs. Barrett, your husband is very good at covering his tracks, but he made mistakes. Small ones. The wire transfer dates don't align perfectly with the documentation. That suggests the paperwork was created after the fact to justify transfers that were already made. Can we use that? In court? Maybe. But we need more. Do you have access to any of his personal devices? Computers, phones, anything with his original communications? I thought about the burner phone in Brandon's office. I might. Get them. And be careful. If he realizes you're building a case, he might destroy evidence. He already knows I know about the affair. I confronted him. Robert went silent. That was premature. Now he'll be cautious. He thinks I'm defeated. He told me I can't afford a good lawyer. Can you? Robert's tone was professional but honest. My services aren't cheap. Neither is litigation attorney. You're looking at hundreds of thousands in legal fees to fight this. I can afford it. I took a breath. My grandfather left me $9 million that Brandon doesn't know about. Another silence. Then Robert laughed, sharp and surprised. Now that changes everything. Mrs. Barrett, we need to meet immediately. And you need to hire an attorney. Not just any attorney. The best. Do you know someone? I know exactly who you need. Patricia Stone. She's ruthless. Expensive. And she specializes in cases exactly like yours, high-value divorces with allegations of fraud. Set up the meeting. Done. I'll call you with a time. He paused. Mrs. Barrett, I have to ask. Why didn't you mention this earlier? I just found out this morning. I didn't know the account existed until last night. That's either the worst timing or the best timing I've ever heard. It's the best, I said firmly, because now I can fight back. I drove back to my grandmother's house instead of going home. The house where Brandon couldn't find me. Where I could think clearly. I brought my laptop and all the documents from the attic and I started building a timeline. January 2023. My parents died. I inherited $5.7 million. February 2023. Brandon convinces me to let him handle the money. March 2023. First transfer to Brandwell Investments. $100,000. April 2023, Brandon starts locking his office door. I worked backward through every bank statement, every document, every memory. The pattern was clear. Small transfers at first. Testing to see if I'd notice. When I didn't, bigger transfers. By the end of the first year, he'd moved $2.3 million. By the end of the second year, everything was gone. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Barrett? This is Patricia Stone. Robert Chin asked me to call you. I understand you need representation. Her voice was crisp, professional, no nonsense. Yes. My husband and his girlfriend stole my inheritance. I need to get it back and make sure they face consequences. Robert sent me a preliminary summary. This is complex. Husband with access to accounts, girlfriend who's an attorney providing legal cover, money moved offshore. You're looking at a long battle. I have resources to fight. How much? $9 million. Hidden inheritance Brandon doesn't know about. Patricia laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a predator spotting prey. Then we're going to destroy them. My retainer is $100,000. My hourly rate is $750. This case could cost you $500,000 in legal fees. Do it. I'll need you to sign engagement papers and pay the retainer by tomorrow morning. After that, we move fast. I want every document, every communication, every piece of evidence you have. And Mrs. Barrett? From this moment on, you don't speak to your husband without my permission. You don't sign anything. You don't make any financial decisions. Everything goes through me. Understood? Understood. Good. We're going to make them wish they'd never heard your name. She hung up. I sat in my grandmother's living room, surrounded by 75 years of family history, and I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Power. Brandon thought he'd taken everything. He thought I was helpless. He'd used my grief and trust as weapons. But he'd forgotten something. I came from Thomas Barrett. A man who'd survived poverty, discrimination, and hardship to build something lasting. That same strength was in me. It always had been. Brandon wanted a war? He was going to get one. And I was going to win. Patricia Stone's office was on the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything about it screamed expensive, from the marble floors to the leather furniture to the assistant who offered me imported water while I waited. Patricia herself was exactly what I expected. Tall, black, stunning in a gray suit that probably cost more than my car payment, with eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Barrett. She shook my hand with a grip that meant business. Let's talk about destroying your husband's life. I liked her immediately. We sat in her conference room and I spread out everything I had. The text messages. The forged documents. The recording of Brandon's confession. The burner phone I'd stolen from his office the night before. Patricia listened to the recording twice, making notes. When Brandon's voice said, "She's so trusting it's almost sad," Patricia's jaw tightened. He's cocky. That's good for us. Cocky people make mistakes. She pulled up the shell company documents. Brandwell Investments, Clearwater Holdings, Summit Capital Group. All registered to Veronica Hayes. All created within a 6-month period. That's not careful planning. That's arrogance. Can we use that? We can use all of it. But here's the problem. Patricia leaned back. Your husband is right about one thing. The signatures on these documents are technically yours. You did sign them, even if you didn't know what you were signing. That makes proving fraud harder. My heart sank. So he's going to get away with it? I didn't say that. Patricia smiled. It was not a nice smile. I said it's harder. Not impossible. We have the text messages showing intent to defraud. We have his recorded confession admitting he tricked you into signing. We have a clear pattern of behavior designed to deceive. And most importantly, we have something they don't know about. My grandfather's money. Exactly. Here's what's going to happen. Your husband plans to file for divorce in 2 weeks. Let him. When he does, he'll disclose assets, carefully hiding everything he stole. We'll file our response, also not mentioning your grandfather's accounts. Then we'll hit them with a fraud lawsuit, a criminal complaint, and a bar association ethics complaint all at once. Can we do that? Not only can we will. Veronica Hayes used her position as an attorney to help someone steal money. That's legal malpractice at minimum, criminal conspiracy at worst. The state bar will suspend her license pending investigation. Without her legal protection, your husband's entire scheme falls apart. Patricia pulled up something on her laptop. I've been researching Ms. Hayes. She's 32, been practicing for 6 years. Clean record. She works at Caldwell and Associates, a mid-size firm doing corporate law. She's up for partner next year. Not anymore. Not anymore, Patricia agreed. When we file the ethics complaint, it becomes public record. Her firm will distance themselves immediately. No firm wants a lawyer under investigation for helping someone commit fraud. Robert Chin joined us an hour later, carrying boxes of documents. He'd spent the last 2 days analyzing every financial record I'd provided. It's worse than I thought, he said, spreading spreadsheets across the conference table. Brandon didn't just steal your inheritance. He took out credit cards in your name. Loans. He maxed out your credit score buying luxury items for himself and Veronica. How much debt? $380,000. All in your name. He planned to stick you with it in the divorce. I felt sick. Can he do that? He already did it. But we can prove you didn't benefit from the debt. Every purchase was for him or Veronica. Cars. Jewelry. That condo they bought in the city. None of it is in your possession or for your benefit. Robert pulled out more documents. I've also traced some of the offshore transfers. The Cayman account is under a company called Paradise Holdings. Want to guess who's listed as the beneficial owner? Veronica? Veronica and Brandon. Joint ownership. They planned this together from the start. Patricia made notes rapidly. This is good. This is all good. We can demonstrate clear intent, clear benefit, and clear conspiracy. Robert, I need you to prepare a full financial analysis. Every dollar accounted for. Where it came from, where it went, who benefited. Already working on it. Good. Naomi, I need you to do something difficult. I need you to go back to your house and act normal. Don't let Brandon know we're building this case. If he asks about lawyers, tell him you can't afford one. Lie to him. He's been lying to you for 2 years. Yes, lie to him. Make him comfortable. The more comfortable he is, the more careless he'll be. Patricia looked at me seriously. Can you do that? I thought about my grandfather working in the mills, saving $50 at a time to build something for his family. He'd been patient, strategic. He hadn't demanded immediate results. He played the long game. I can do it. Good. Because in 2 weeks, we're going to hit them so hard they won't know what happened. I left Patricia's office with a plan, a legal team, and a purpose. The retainer was paid. The forensic accountant was working. Everything was in motion. But Patricia was right. I had to go home. I had to pretend. The house was empty when I got there. Brandon hadn't been back since our confrontation. Good. That made it easier. I spent the evening packing up his office, making it look like I'd given up. I boxed his clothes, his papers, his personal items. Not to throw out. To document. I photographed everything before packing it, creating evidence of what he owned. At 9 o'clock he called. Naomi. What do you want, Brandon? I'm sending movers tomorrow for my things. I'd appreciate it if you're not there. Fine. I'm staying at my grandmother's house anyway. Good. He paused. Did you get a lawyer yet? I can't afford one. You maxed out all my credit cards. I heard him smile through the phone. You should probably file on your own then. Save money. I'll have Veronica send over the divorce papers. Sign them and this can all be over quickly. Sure, Brandon. Whatever you want. Really? He sounded surprised. What's the point in fighting? You win. You and Veronica can have your life together. I just want this to be over. Silence. Then cautiously, that's very mature of you. I'm tired. I'm sad. I just want to move on. Okay, good. The papers should arrive next week. Sign them and send them back. We can be done in 30 days. Okay. Naomi? For what it's worth, I'm sorry it ended this way. No, he wasn't. But I said, goodbye, Brandon. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. He believes I've given up. He's sending divorce papers next week. Perfect. Don't sign anything. Bring them to me the moment they arrive. How did you sound? Defeated. Good. Stay defeated until we're ready. Then we show them who you really are. That night, I slept in my grandmother's house surrounded by boxes of my grandfather's papers. I dreamed about him. About a tall man in work clothes, calloused hands, determined eyes. In the dream, he handed me the metal box and said, "You're a Barrett. We don't quit." I woke up knowing exactly what I needed to do. I was going to get my money back. I was going to destroy their plan. And I was going to make sure Brandon and Veronica faced consequences for every lie, every theft, every moment they'd spent celebrating my pain. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon by courier. I signed for them, took them inside, and photographed every page before calling Patricia. He's asking for the house, the cars, and a $50,000 settlement for his portion of marital assets. I read through the paperwork in disbelief. He stole millions and he wants me to pay him. Of course he does. Veronica drafted this. She's trying to make it look like a standard divorce settlement. Sign nothing. Bring everything to my office tomorrow. I went to Patricia's office the next morning with the papers and something else. More evidence. I went back through my email accounts last night. The ones Brandon didn't know about. I found confirmation emails from the shell companies. They were automatically filtered to spam, which is why I never saw them. But they're there. Every transfer has a corresponding email showing the amount, the account, and the date. Robert Chin practically snatched the laptop from me. This is exactly what we needed. The timestamps prove the transfers happened before the authorization documents were dated. He created the paperwork after the fact. Patricia read through the divorce filing, her expression growing darker. He's claiming you were a spendthrift who wasted money on failed business ventures. He's positioning himself as the responsible spouse who tried to save your finances. That's a complete lie. It's a provable lie. We have evidence you never started any business. Never made any investments. All the money went to him and Veronica. She made notes in the margins. This is good. This shows consciousness of guilt. He's not just stealing, he's creating a false narrative to justify it. What do we do now? Now we file our response. And we include a few surprises. Patricia drafted a response that was a masterpiece of legal strategy. It denied every claim in Brandon's filing. It demanded full financial disclosure, something he couldn't provide without revealing the theft. And it included a counterclaim for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages we're claiming are substantial, Patricia explained. Not just the $5.7 million he stole. We're also claiming the interest that money would have earned, the emotional harm, the destruction of your credit. We're asking for $12 million total. Can we get that? If we prove fraud, yes. And we can prove fraud. She pulled out another document. I'm also filing a motion to freeze all assets in both Brandon's and Veronica's names pending the outcome of the case. Every bank account, every investment, the condo they bought, everything. Can you do that? With the evidence we have? Absolutely. We're showing clear flight risk money already moved offshore and clear evidence of ongoing fraud. The judge will grant it. When? I'm filing everything tomorrow. By Friday their accounts will be frozen. I thought about Brandon and Veronica celebrating, planning their future, spending my money without a care in the world. They have no idea what's coming, I said quietly. No, Patricia agreed. They don't. The next 72 hours moved in slow motion. I stayed at my grandmother's house, pretending to be devastated. I didn't answer Brandon's calls. I didn't respond to the text messages from Veronica's assistant asking about signing the papers. I waited. On Friday morning, Patricia called. It's done. The judge granted the asset freeze. Every account in Brandon's or Veronica's name is locked. The condo is frozen. Even the Cayman account, we worked with federal authorities and got that frozen too. How long until they know? They probably know now. The notifications went out this morning. An hour later, Brandon called. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. By the afternoon, I had 15 missed calls and a string of text messages that went from confused to angry to desperate. What did you do? This is insane. Call your lawyer off. Naomi, answer your phone right now. You're going to regret this. I'll bury you in court. I forwarded all the messages to Patricia. Perfect. Save everything. His anger is showing guilt. That evening I got a call from an unknown number. I answered it on Patricia's advice, with her recording the conversation. Naomi, this is Veronica Hayes. Her voice was cold, professional. Not the warm, flirty tone from the text messages I'd read. What do you want, Veronica? I think there's been a misunderstanding. The asset freeze is excessive. Brandon and I are willing to negotiate a fair settlement. Fair? You stole $5.7 million from me. That's not how we see it. The money was invested. In shell companies you created. Using forged signatures. That's not investment. That's theft. Silence. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Less professional. More defensive. You signed those documents. Because Brandon tricked me while I was grieving my parents. You helped him do it. You're an attorney. You knew it was fraud. I did no such thing. I provided legal services to my client. Your client? You mean your boyfriend? The man you're having an affair with? I let the anger show. I have the text messages, Veronica. All of them. She's so trusting it's almost sad. She'll sign anything. I have everything. Another long silence. What do you want? I want my money back. All of it. I want you both to face consequences. And I want you to lose your law license. You can't do that. Patricia Stone thinks I can. So does the State Bar Association. I filed an ethics complaint yesterday. They've opened an investigation. I heard her breathing change. Fast, shallow. Panic. You filed an ethics complaint? You used your position as an attorney to help someone commit fraud against his wife. That's legal malpractice. You're going to be disbarred. No. No, that's not. Brandon said you couldn't afford a good lawyer. He said you'd just give up. Brandon was wrong about a lot of things. Veronica's voice cracked. If I lose my license, I lose everything. My career. My partnership track. You should have thought about that before you helped steal from me. Naomi, please. We can work this out. I can make Brandon return some of the money. Some? Most of it. We can negotiate. No negotiation. You return all of it or you go to prison. Prison? Her voice went high, panicked. You can't prove criminal fraud. Actually, we can. The FBI is investigating the offshore accounts. Moving money to the Cayman Islands to hide it from a spouse during divorce proceedings? That's federal fraud. Wire fraud. You're both facing federal charges. I was bluffing about the FBI, but Veronica didn't know that. Patricia had mentioned contacting federal authorities about the offshore accounts, but no investigation had been opened yet. I didn't know, Veronica said quickly. Brandon told me the money was his. He said you agreed to the investments. I didn't know I was helping him steal. You sent a text message saying she has no idea. You knew exactly what you were doing. Those messages were taken out of context. Tell it to the Bar Association. Tell it to the judge. Tell it to the FBI when they interview you. I kept my voice cold. You're going to lose everything, Veronica. Just like you tried to make me lose everything. The difference is you actually deserve it. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I felt powerful in a way I hadn't felt since before my parents died. Patricia called 10 minutes later. She called me, begging to settle. She's terrified. Good. Brandon called too. He wants to talk. Claims he can explain everything. What did you tell him? I told him to put his offer in writing. If he wants to settle, he needs to propose terms. Full restitution plus damages. Signed confession. Agreement not to contest the divorce. Patricia paused. They're crumbling, Naomi. The asset freeze hurt them badly. Veronica's firm put her on leave pending the ethics investigation. Brandon's business is spreading rumors. They're isolated and desperate. Is it wrong that I'm glad? After what they did to you? No. It's justice. Patricia's voice softened slightly. How are you holding up? I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I'm also okay. For the first time in 2 years, I feel like myself again. Good. Because this is just the beginning. When we get to court, we're going to make them answer for everything. Every lie. Every stolen dollar. Every moment they spent celebrating your pain. I hung up and sat in my grandmother's living room, looking at the photograph of my grandfather. Thomas Barrett. A man who'd built something from nothing. Who'd survived and thrived despite every obstacle. I was his granddaughter. I had his strength. His determination. Brandon and Veronica had made a mistake. They thought I was weak. Broken. Easy to destroy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The settlement offer came 3 days later. Patricia called me into her office to review it. They're offering to return $3.2 million immediately. Another $1.5 million over 5 years. And they want all criminal and ethics complaints dropped. That's not even the full amount. I know. It's insulting. Patricia tossed the document aside. We reject it. We're going to court. What if we lose? We won't lose. The evidence is overwhelming. But even if somehow we did, you still have your grandfather's money. You're not dependent on winning this case. That gives us power. We can afford to take risks they can't. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Patricia warned me that Brandon and Veronica would both be there with their attorneys. Stay calm. Don't react no matter what they say or how they look at you. We're playing the long game. I wore a simple navy suit to court. No jewelry except my grandmother's watch. I wanted to look like what I was, a woman who'd been victimized, not someone seeking revenge. Brandon arrived with his attorney, a nervous-looking man named Jeffrey Stone who kept wiping his forehead. Brandon had lost weight. His suit hung wrong on him. He didn't look at me. Veronica came separately with her attorney, a woman who looked as expensive as Patricia. But Veronica herself looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back severely. No makeup. She glanced at me once, then away. Good. They should be scared. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Martha Reeves. She had a reputation for being fair but strict. No patience for games. We're here for preliminary matters in Barrett versus Barrett and related cases, she began. I've reviewed the filings. Mrs. Barrett is alleging fraud, theft, and conspiracy. The defendants claim these are marital assets being distributed normally. Mr. Stone, you filed the original divorce petition. Explain why I shouldn't freeze your client's assets pending resolution. Jeffrey stood, fumbling with his papers. Your Honor, Mr. Barrett has legitimate concerns about his financial security. Freezing his accounts is excessive. He moved $5.7 million to offshore accounts, Patricia said coolly. That demonstrates flight risk. Those were joint investment decisions. There's nothing joint about forged signatures and secret shell companies. Patricia submitted documents to the judge. Your Honor, we have text messages between Mr. Barrett and Ms. Hayes explicitly discussing how to hide money from Mrs. Barrett. We have recorded admissions. We have documentation showing the shell companies were created solely to funnel money away from Mrs. Barrett. Judge Reeves read through the documents silently. Her expression grew colder. Mr. Stone, did your client inform you about these text messages? Jeffrey looked at Brandon, who stared at the table. Your Honor, those messages are being taken out of context. She has no idea we're draining her accounts seems fairly clear context to me. Judge Reeves looked at Veronica's attorney. Ms. Williams, your client is an attorney. She used her legal expertise to help Mr. Barrett defraud his wife. Why shouldn't I refer this to the state bar immediately? Veronica's attorney stood. Your Honor, Ms. Hayes provided legal services in good faith. She had no knowledge of any fraudulent intent. There are text messages where she calls Mrs. Barrett stupid and easy to manipulate. Judge Reeves looked at Veronica directly. You're an officer of the court, Ms. Hayes. You knew this was fraud. Veronica stood quickly. Your Honor, I made a mistake. I allowed my personal relationship with Mr. Barrett to cloud my judgment. But I never intended. You never intended to get caught. Judge Reeves cut her off. Sit down, Ms. Hayes. Veronica sat, her face pale. Judge Reeves turned to Patricia. What are you seeking, Ms. Stone? Full restitution of $5.7 million plus interest. Damages for emotional distress. Compensation for credit destruction and legal fees. We're also requesting both defendants be held in contempt for attempting to hide assets during divorce proceedings. And criminal charges? We're working with the district attorney's office. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Brandon made a sound. Almost a whimper. Jeffrey put a hand on his arm, but Brandon shook it off. This is insane. Naomi, please. We can work this out. Judge Reeves slammed her gavel. Mr. Barrett, you don't address the plaintiff directly. You speak through your attorney. But Your Honor, she's my wife. She's your victim. And if I hear another outburst, I'll hold you in contempt. Judge Reeves looked at the court clerk. Asset freeze remains in place. All accounts, all properties, all investments belonging to either Mr. Barrett or Ms. Hayes are frozen pending trial. Trial date is set for 60 days from today. Discovery begins immediately. She looked at both defendants. And I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation. You're both free to go, but don't leave the jurisdiction. The gavel came down again. We'd won the first battle. Outside the courtroom, Patricia pulled me aside. That was better than I expected. Judge Reeves is taking this seriously. The criminal referral is huge. What happens now? Discovery. They have to provide all their financial records. All communications. Everything. And we do the same, but we're not hiding anything. Except my grandfather's accounts. Those aren't relevant to the theft of your inheritance. We don't have to disclose them. As we walked to the elevator, I heard raised voices behind us. Brandon and Veronica were arguing in the hallway. This is your fault. Veronica's voice was shrill. You said she was harmless. You said she'd never fight back. You're the attorney. You were supposed to make it foolproof. I did. How was I supposed to know she'd find a better lawyer? You said she had no money. She didn't. I don't know where she got the money for Patricia Stone. Unless. Brandon's voice dropped. Unless she's been hiding money from me. Oh, that's rich. You steal millions and you're worried about her hiding money? Shut up. Both of you. That was Jeffrey. You're in public. The walls have ears. Patricia smiled at me as we got on the elevator. Let them panic. Let them turn on each other. That just makes our case easier. Over the next month, discovery revealed everything. Brandon and Veronica had to turn over all their financial records, emails, text messages. The paper trail was devastating. They bought a condo $890,000. Luxury cars $180,000. Jewelry, vacations, designer clothes another $320,000. They'd spent over $1.3 million of my money on themselves while telling me we needed to tighten our belts. Robert Chin compiled it all into a presentation that showed exactly where every dollar had gone. Patricia added photographs. The condo with its city views. The car's a Mercedes for Brandon, a BMW for Veronica. The receipts from restaurants I couldn't afford. The jury is going to hate them, Patricia said with satisfaction. This isn't just fraud. It's cruelty. The district attorney filed criminal charges 2 weeks before the trial. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Conspiracy. Both Brandon and Veronica were arrested, processed, and released on bail. Veronica's law firm fired her. She lost her partnership track. The state bar suspended her license pending the outcome of the criminal case. Brandon's company put him on unpaid leave. His colleagues stopped returning his calls. The business community in our city was small. Everyone knew what he'd done. They tried to settle again. Offered full restitution plus $2 million in damages if we dropped the criminal charges. No, I told Patricia. They wanted to destroy me. They celebrated destroying me. Now they face the consequences. You're sure? This is a good offer. I'm sure. Patricia smiled. Good. Because I want to take them to trial too. I want them to have to sit in that courtroom and face what they did. The trial was set to begin in 2 weeks. I was ready. Brandon and Veronica had started with a plan to steal everything and leave me with nothing. Now they were the ones with nothing. No money. No jobs. No future. And I was just getting started. The trial began on a cold November morning. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the case, and local media had picked up the story. Woman fights back against husband and lawyer who stole millions, was the headline in the city paper. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Patricia, wearing the same navy suit I'd worn to the preliminary hearing. Simple. Professional. Sympathetic. Brandon and Veronica sat at separate defense tables with their attorneys. They weren't speaking to each other. Patricia had told me they'd completely turned on each other during discovery, each trying to blame the other for the fraud. Judge Reeves entered and everyone stood. This is Barrett versus Barrett and Barrett versus Hayes. Are both parties ready? Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said confidently. Jeffrey and Veronica's attorney both nodded. Then let's begin. Miss Stone, your opening statement. Patricia stood, walking to face the jury. 12 people. 7 women, 5 men. Mixed ages and backgrounds. They'd all been screened to make sure they could be impartial, but I could see some of them already looking at Brandon and Veronica with suspicion. Members of the jury, this is a case about betrayal. About a husband who used his wife's grief as a weapon. About a lawyer who forgot her oath and helped steal millions. Patricia's voice was clear, strong. Naomi Barrett lost her parents in a car accident 3 years ago. She inherited $5.7 million money her father spent 40 years earning, money her mother saved from a teacher's salary. Money that represented their life's work and their love for their daughter. She paused, letting that sink in. Within weeks of their funeral, Brandon Barrett convinced his grieving wife to let him handle the finances. He told her not to worry. He told her he'd take care of everything. And he did take care of it by systematically stealing every penny with the help of his girlfriend, attorney Veronica Hayes. Patricia clicked a remote. The screen behind her lit up with the text messages. The jury leaned forward, reading. She has no idea. She's so trusting it's almost sad. She'll sign anything we put in front of her. Patricia let each message hang in the air. These aren't the words of people managing investments. These are the words of people committing fraud. She walked them through everything. The shell companies. The forged signatures. The offshore accounts. The luxury purchases made with stolen money. By the time she finished, 2 jurors were shaking their heads in disgust. Brandon Barrett and Veronica Hayes thought they were clever. They thought they'd get away with it. They thought Naomi was too broken, too trusting, too weak to fight back. Patricia looked at me, then back at the jury. They were wrong. And now they're going to pay for every dollar they stole, every lie they told, and every moment they spent celebrating her pain. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Jeffrey stood for Brandon's opening. He looked uncomfortable, pulling at his collar. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not as simple as opposing counsel makes it sound. Mr. Barrett made investment decisions he believed were in the best interest of the marriage. Yes, there was an affair. Yes, the marriage broke down. But that doesn't make legitimate investment decisions into fraud. It was weak and he knew it. The jury wasn't buying it. Veronica's attorney tried a different approach. Ms. Hayes is a respected attorney who provided professional services to a client. She had no knowledge of any fraudulent intent. She prepared documents based on information provided by Mr. Barrett. To hold her responsible for his deception is unfair. Also weak. Patricia had done her job well. There was no good defense for what they'd done. The prosecution of the case took 3 days. Patricia called witness after witness. The bank manager who'd processed the transfers and thought they seemed unusual but were technically authorized. The forensic accountant who walked the jury through every stolen dollar. Character witnesses who testified about how devastated I'd been after my parents' death, how vulnerable, how trusting. And then Patricia called me to the stand. I walked up slowly, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Patricia started with easy questions. My background. My parents. Their death. Then she moved to Brandon. When did you meet your husband? 7 years ago. At a friend's party. He was charming. Successful. He seemed genuinely interested in me. And when did you get married? 5 years ago. Small ceremony. My parents were there. They liked Brandon. My voice caught. They trusted him. What happened after your parents died? I took a breath. I fell apart. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I was drowning in grief. Brandon told me he'd handle everything. The funeral arrangements. The estate. The inheritance. He said I shouldn't have to think about money while I was grieving. Did you trust him? Completely. He was my husband. Why wouldn't I trust him? Patricia showed me the documents. One by one. Did you sign these? Yes. But I didn't read them carefully. Brandon would bring home stacks of papers and tell me where to sign. He said they were just routine investment documents. I believed him. Did you know he was creating shell companies? No. Did you know he was moving money offshore? No. Did you know he was having an affair with Veronica Hayes? Not until I found the messages on his laptop 2 months ago. What did you feel when you discovered the truth? I looked at the jury. Destroyed. My parents had just died. I thought my husband was the only person I could count on. Finding out he'd been stealing from me, lying to me, planning to leave me with nothing. I felt like my whole life was a lie. Patricia's questions were done. Jeffrey stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Barrett, you signed all these documents, correct? Yes, but... Yes or no, please. You signed them? Yes. And you had access to the accounts. You could have checked them at any time. I trusted my husband. I didn't think I needed to check. But you could have. You chose not to. Patricia objected. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Reeves said. Jeffrey tried a few more questions, but he couldn't shake my testimony. I'd signed the documents because I trusted my husband. That wasn't negligence. That was normal. Brandon didn't testify. Jeffrey advised against it. Too risky. Veronica did testify. Her attorney thought it would help to humanize her. It didn't. Under Patricia's cross-examination, Veronica fell apart. Ms. Hayes, you're an attorney, correct? Yes. You took an oath to uphold the law? Yes. And you knowingly helped Brandon Barrett steal from his wife? No. I didn't know it was stealing. Brandon said the money was jointly owned. But you called Mrs. Barrett stupid in text messages. You said she was easy to manipulate. Those don't sound like the words of someone who thought everything was legal. Veronica's face flushed. Those messages were. I was venting. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught. Patricia pulled out more messages. You wrote, once we drain the last account, we can start our new life. What did you mean by drain? That's just poor word choice. Or honest word choice. You knew you were draining Mrs. Barrett's accounts. Taking everything. Leaving her with nothing. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Ms. Hayes? Explain to the jury how stealing $5.7 million from a grieving woman isn't exactly what it looks like. Veronica couldn't answer. She sat there, mouth opening and closing, while the jury stared at her with disgust. The trial lasted 6 days total. Closing arguments were on a Friday afternoon. Patricia stood before the jury one last time. You've seen the evidence. You've heard the testimony. You've read the messages where these two defendants plan to destroy Naomi Barrett's life. The only question now is justice. Do we allow people to steal simply because they're clever? Do we let attorneys abuse their position to help commit fraud? Or do we hold them accountable? She paused. Naomi Barrett trusted her husband. She trusted that an attorney wouldn't help someone break the law. That trust was used as a weapon against her. Don't let these defendants walk away. Make them face what they've done. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. In the matter of Barrett versus Barrett, we find for the plaintiff. We award full restitution of $5.7 million plus interest, totaling $6.2 million. We also award $3 million in punitive damages for emotional distress and willful fraud. Brandon's head dropped into his hands. In the matter of Barrett versus Hayes, we find for the plaintiff. We award $2 million in damages for conspiracy and legal malpractice. Veronica started crying. Loud, ugly sobs that echoed through the courtroom. Judge Reeves banged her gavel. Order. The judgment stands. Both defendants are ordered to pay immediately. Failure to do so will result in additional penalties and possible jail time for contempt. She looked at both of them. I'm also recommending the district attorney proceed with full criminal prosecution. What you did was not just wrong, it was criminal. This court is adjourned. We won. I sat there, Patricia's hand on my shoulder, and felt something break open inside me. Not sadness. Relief. Justice. Outside the courtroom, reporters were waiting. Mrs. Barrett, how do you feel about the verdict? Grateful. Justice was served. What will you do with the money? Rebuild my life. Honor my parents' memory. And make sure no one else goes through what I went through. That night, Patricia called. The state bar formally disbarred Veronica Hayes. She'll never practice law again. Good. And Brandon's company fired him officially. His reputation in the business community is destroyed. Also good. Naomi, you did it. You fought back and you won. I hung up and looked around my grandmother's house. The house that had sheltered me. The house where I'd found my grandfather's gift. Thomas Barrett had given me the tools to fight. My parents had given me the reason. And I'd given myself the courage. Brandon and Veronica had lost everything. Their money. Their careers. Their future. And I was just beginning mine. The money came back in stages over the next 3 months. The frozen accounts were unfrozen and transferred to me. The condo was sold. The cars were liquidated. Brandon's retirement accounts were emptied. Veronica's savings were drained. By February, I had recovered $8.9 million, my original $5.7 million, the interest, the damages, and everything they'd spent. Combined with my grandfather's accounts, I had nearly $18 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. More than I needed. More than I knew what to do with. But I had ideas. I started with my business. The event planning company I'd wanted to launch 3 years ago before Brandon talked me out of it. I leased office space downtown, hired a small team, and built something from scratch. Barrett Events specialized in memorial services and celebration of life events. I wanted to help other families honor their loved ones the way I wished I'd been able to honor my parents without the shadow of Brandon's betrayal hanging over everything. The business grew faster than I expected. Word spread. Within 6 months, I had more clients than I could handle. I hired more staff, expanded the office, created something real and lasting. But the business wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. I established the Thomas and Louise Barrett Foundation in honor of my grandparents. It provided financial assistance to people dealing with grief counseling services, legal help for widows and widowers, support for families facing sudden loss. I funded it with $5 million from my settlement. The same amount Brandon had tried to steal. Money that had been meant to destroy me was now helping others survive their darkest moments. The foundation's first grant went to a young mother whose husband had died suddenly, leaving her with 3 kids and a mountain of medical debt. I met her at the office, saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear, and I remembered being that afraid. I don't know how I'll ever repay this, she said, crying. You don't repay it. You survive. You rebuild. And someday when you can, you help someone else. She hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. That's when I knew I'd done the right thing. Brandon's criminal trial happened in April. I didn't attend. Patricia said I didn't need to, and honestly, I didn't want to see him again. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for wire fraud. Veronica got 2 years for conspiracy. I felt nothing when I heard the news. No satisfaction. No anger. Nothing. They were just people who'd made terrible choices and were now facing consequences. They didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered was the future I was building. In May, I met someone. His name was Jerome Mitchell. He was an architect who'd been hired to renovate the building next to my office. I kept seeing him in the coffee shop between our buildings, always with blueprints spread out, always focused. One morning, he asked if the chair across from me was taken. "It's all yours," I said. We started talking. About buildings. About design. About how spaces can hold memory and meaning. He had no idea who I was. No idea about the lawsuit or the money or any of it. He just knew I was Naomi, the woman who ran the event planning company, who always ordered black coffee and a blueberry muffin. "What made you start your business?" he asked one day. "I wanted to help people. And I needed to prove to myself that I could build something real. From what I hear, you're doing both." We started having coffee regularly. Then lunch. Then dinner. 6 weeks after we met, he kissed me outside my office building, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. "Oh, I should probably tell you something," I said one evening over dinner at a small restaurant. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months, and it felt serious enough that he deserved to know. "Okay." He set down his fork, looking worried. "I was married before. My ex-husband stole millions from me. It was all over the news. The trial, everything." Jerome nodded slowly. "I know. You know? I Googled you after we met. I wanted to make sure you weren't secretly married or something." He smiled slightly. "I read about what happened. I'm sorry you went through that. And you still wanted to have coffee with me?" "Of course. Your ex-husband being a criminal doesn't say anything about you except that you're brave for fighting back." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Naomi, I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in you. The woman who builds businesses to help people. Who lights up when she talks about honoring her grandparents. Who steals extra creamers from the coffee shop." I laughed, embarrassed. "I don't steal them. You take 6 every time. For the office." We laughed together and it felt easy. Natural. Nothing like the careful dance I'd done with Brandon, always trying to be what he wanted. Jerome liked me exactly as I was. By summer, my life looked completely different from a year ago. I had a thriving business, a foundation helping hundreds of families, a man who loved me without wanting anything except my company. And I had peace. I sold the house Brandon and I had shared. Too many bad memories. Instead, I renovated my grandmother's house, turning it into exactly what I wanted. Bright, open, filled with photographs of my parents and grandparents. A home that honored where I came from. One August evening, I was sitting on my grandmother's porch with Jerome, watching the sunset, when my phone rang. A known number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Naomi?" The voice was small, broken. "Veronica, what do you want?" I asked coldly. "I'm sorry." She was crying. "I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm out of prison now and I've been trying to rebuild my life and I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I sat there, the phone against my ear, feeling nothing. "I lost everything," Veronica continued. "My license. My career. 2 years of my life. Brandon won't even talk to me anymore. He blames me for everything." "You helped him steal from me," I said flatly. "You called me stupid. You celebrated ruining my life." "I know. I was terrible. I was greedy and cruel and I thought I was so smart." She sobbed. "But I paid for it. I lost everything." "Good," I said simply. "Naomi, please. Don't call me again, Veronica. I don't forgive you. I don't wish you well. I don't think about you at all anymore. You're nothing to me. Live with that." I hung up. Jerome looked at me. "You okay?" "Yeah." I leaned into him. "I'm okay." And I was. Veronica had called looking for absolution. For me to tell her it was all right, that she'd suffered enough, that I forgave her. But I didn't. And I never would. And that was okay too. Forgiveness is for people who deserve it. Veronica and Brandon didn't deserve anything from me except the consequences they'd earned. In September, the foundation held its first annual fundraiser. 300 people attended. Business leaders, community members, families we'd helped. We raised $2 million in one night. I stood at the podium looking out at all those faces and I thought about my grandfather, Thomas Barrett. A man who'd saved $50 at a time, invested in the future, and built something that lasted 75 years. My grandfather believed in the power of preparation, I told the crowd. He believed in doing the work today so tomorrow would be better. He never met me. But his gift saved my life when I needed it most. Tonight, we're continuing his legacy. We're preparing for tomorrow by helping families survive today. The crowd stood and applauded. Later, Jerome found me standing alone, looking at a photograph of my grandparents on the memory wall. "You did good tonight," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I did what they would have wanted. Built something that matters. They'd be proud of you." "I hope so." We stood there together and I realized something. I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy for the first time since before my parents died. Brandon had tried to destroy me. He'd stolen my money, my trust, my sense of safety. He'd used my grief as a weapon. But he'd failed. I'd survived. I'd fought back. I'd won. And more than that, I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of what he'd tried to burn down. A business that helped people. A foundation that honored my family. A relationship with a man who loved me without conditions. A life that was entirely my own. Brandon was in prison. Veronica was disbarred. Both of them had lost everything. And I had everything I'd ever wanted. Not revenge. Justice. And the chance to become the person my grandfather knew I could be. A year ago, I'd been sitting in my kitchen, staring at text messages that destroyed my world. Now I was standing in a room full of people who respected me, next to a man who loved me, surrounded by evidence of everything I'd built. Thomas Barrett had given me the tools to fight. My parents had given me the strength. And I'd given myself the future. Brandon wanted to take everything. Instead, he gave me the motivation to become someone stronger than I'd ever imagined. In the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying him. Becoming unstoppable.